We can now check in the window here that we are selecting the right surface by going to Properties and just toggling Surface Visible on off. This is quite useful for making sure you have selected what you think you've selected. So we're sure that this is the grass surface. Now you can see the importer has given them really silly numeric names. What we might want to do is rename these surfaces so that we know what they are when we're coming back to them later. So if I just click on here, I can now rename it to whatever I want it to be. So now that it's called our grass surface, let's go into the channel section, go to our environment channel group, and what I'm going to first do is unpack all of these folders so that we can access all of the surfaces easily. Now that we've done that, you can see here's the grass surface that we just renamed. Now what I want to do is add a second texture to this grass surface to make it look a little bit more interesting. Let's go over to the channel list, select an item in the channel list and then press T. We can go down and find texture. So now I've got a texture, dragged it into our scene. Let's connect it onto the second available node here so that our second texture stage can be our new texture. Now at the moment this is totally empty, so let's load a new texture into here. What I want to do is look at these as thumbnails so I can see what we've got available here, and I think I'm going to add this gravel with grass texture as our second texture stage. So we've imported it there now. I'm now going to rename the texture to grass low tile because we're going to tile this one much less than the high tiling grass that we've already got applied. So we've got the surface selected still here. What I can do now is go to the second texture stage where you can see we have our grass low tile texture already assigned, and we can now go into here and start setting up how we want it to look. So first of all, we want to use a different set of mapping coordinates. So if we go to UV set 1, a different set of coordinates, what we can do now is go and have a look at giving it different mapping coordinates. So what I'm going to do first of all is give ourselves a bit more space of the interface here, and I'm going to set this to planar Y. Now we can't see it at the moment because we haven't defined how it should work. What we need to do is go to color blending here, and what I'm going to set this to is blend factor alpha. Now what that will do is it will allow us to use our texture factor slider here to define how much of which texture is being displayed. So at the moment it's on 0, which means our texture 1, our high tiling grass texture here, is being fully displayed, and the second texture isn't being displayed at all. So as we move the slider across, we now have our second texture being fully displayed, so the first texture isn't being displayed at all. So let's now move it halfway across and we can define the mapping coordinates. So we've already got it set on planar Y, which is correct. What I want to do now is give it a little bit more tiling. Let's say it should tile 30 times in each direction, something like that. What we can do now is bring it down a little bit less, something like that. I want to now go to our animation view and see how it looks. Well, this is how it was looking before, and it's now looking, I think something like that would probably work quite well. You see, it just breaks things up a little, so when we're zoomed out you see a bit more detail. Maybe a little bit more than that. We'll now use reflection to make our windows look a bit more realistic. So what I want to do again is go back to the Object 3D view and select our window surface. So if we go on here and select them, again let's use this surface visible tab here just to see that the right surface is selected. Let's now rename the surface as well so that we know that this is the window surface in future. Great, okay, so we've got the window surface here. Now let's apply a texture to it. So back to the channel section again, find the Windows surface on here. Now really we want some kind of a reflective texture, and I know there's a good one in the templates for Quest. So let's go over to templates, and what I'm going to do is drag in this template here, the set reflection map, and you can see there is a cube map texture here. So let's delete the other channel, so we've just got our cube map texture, and let's apply this to our Windows surface. So back to the object section, you can see our Windows surface now has our cube map applied. Now for the mapping coordinates, what I want to do with this one is you use cube map reflection. Now this will give us a default pretty good way of dealing with the reflections. It looks reasonably good. Now if we go to surface, let's define some transparency. So I've gone from advanced back to easy mode. I'm now going to go to alpha value, and so if we now go back over to the properties tab, we can use our texture factor slider again to define how much visibility there is for our windows. So let's leave it at something like that. You can't really see it too well at the moment. We'll have a look at tuning this surface a little better once we've got the inside of our house imported and a camera that allows you to move around. We'll now show how you can assign pre-rendered light maps to objects. So let's have a go at importing the inside of our house. Now the inside of our house has been light mapped. It's had light maps created in 3ds Max and rendered out. And so if we import it into Quest now, we can have a go at applying those light maps and getting it to look more realistic. So if we go to File, Import again, and you can see we've got an X file here called House Inner. I'm going to double click on that, and we'll just click OK on this because we're going to delete the group. So we've used our default settings as we did with the environment there, and you can see our house inside object has now been imported. What I want to do now is just select the object. I'll just put my mouse around to select all of the channels and hit Control C. So I've copied all of the channels. I'm now going to go over to the group tree and go to our environment CGR where our environment object is, and let's paste it here. So we now have both of these objects in the same channel group. We can now go to our house inner group and delete it. So our house is now in our environment group. Okay, so let's also go back to the channel section which allows you to see two channel graphs, and let's link it up to our main scene. So we've got a house inside here. I'm just going to do exactly the same thing, connected it up like that, and if we now go to the animation section, you should be able to see that we now have an inside of our house already linked up and being rendered. So the next stage is to set up the light maps for this object. So let's start by going to the channel section and unpacking all of the surfaces. So now that we've unpacked all of the surfaces, let's just move it over here and give it a bit more space. We now need to apply our light map, and we're going to apply our light map to the second texture stage of all of these surfaces. So what we need to do first is get a texture channel. So again, I'm just going to my channel list and getting a texture channel from here. I'm now going to select this, and whilst holding L, click on all of these surfaces, and you can see links have been created to all of them. We can now double click the texture and come in here and look for our light map. I'm just going to look at thumbnails so that we can